Welcome into the Detroit Lions training facility here in Allen Park for our final show dedicated strictly to the 2022 NFL Combine. Joined by Tim Twentyman of DetroitLions.com. I'm Dannie Rogers. Tim, we finally survived Combine Week. It was a great week.
It was a great week.
A lot of great things.
We saw a lot of speed is what we saw.
We did.
We saw a ton of speed, and it's across the board.
Right.
I'm not talking about just running backs and cornerbacks and wide receivers. I mean, over 30 guys ran sub 4.4, Danny. And I mean, it was a record for running backs, wide receivers, defensive backs, defensive linemen. I mean, if you're looking for speed, if you're looking for impact, if you're looking for guys coming off the edge or stretch that outside, that X that can go deep, Ben Johnson talked about that. I think that's really where this draft is really, really strong. There's a ton of speed in this draft, and you're going to be able to find it at all levels, at all positions.
A little bit more of history that was made. We had the fastest defensive player since 03 run a sub 4.3, a 4.23 in that 40-yard dash. You had the fastest punter and the heaviest offensive lineman, Daniel Falele, 384 pounds.
At 6'8".
Yeah, that's a
impressive.
big man.
That's a lot of man.
That's a lot of man. So we love seeing some history made. And something that I found really interesting was if the Combine had some main event, if it was like the Olympics and there was a medal count, what school do you think took home the most medals?
Georgia, I'd say.
I think you're right. They did. But who do you have coming in second with the most medals?
Ooh, that's a good one.
And I don't think you're going to get this one because I would not.
No.
You got to go out to the Pac-12 to find them.
Oh, you got to go out to.
No. Arizona State.
Arizona State.
Arizona State. Yes, they came at 8. We're going to call them medals. 3 medals behind Georgia. So they had 8. And then you have Cincinnati, Baylor, Michigan. Brown is up there with some. Sam Houston, Memphis, Notre Dame. So all of these schools getting into that medal count, a.k.a. players that just showed up in those skills drills.
Too. I like that.
Yeah.
It's not just your Power 5, conferences and Power 5 teams or those teams that were vying for the playoffs. You can find talent anywhere. And I would even go to the Division II and Division III ranks, too, as we've seen in years past, and we saw this year, too, with some guys. Look, if you can play football, the NFL will find you.
They will.
And you will get into a camp and be able to prove yourself. I think, to your point with that statistic, it's just, if you can play ball, the NFL finds you.
And I love that. I love that about the NFL. A ton of resources. But, Tim, I do want to get to your top performer of the NFL Combine. I think everyone might be able to guess because it was a staggering stat that came out of that 40-yard dash.
It was. And it was Jordan Davis out of Georgia. I mean, he wowed the Combine, in my opinion. I mean, 4.78 40-yard dash for a guy who's 341 pounds.
Folks, that's
ridiculous.
Insane.
I mean, look at the vertical there on the screen, 32. The broad jump of 10.3, that was almost a foot more than the next defensive lineman.
Wow.
I'll remind you, next down, he's 341 pounds. I mean, you get that moving. If you're a quarterback, I mean, at 4.78, that's quarterback speed for most average quarterbacks in the NFL. So you've got a guy who's 341 pounds who can run as fast as you. Imagine him falling on you. I mean,
please don't. I don't even want to imagine
survive.
That. Probably a few other body parts won't.
So you look at his skill set at Georgia, just the way he could push the pocket, and just such a dominant guy from a strength standpoint. But then you see him run that 40-yard dash, and you're like, wow, he's not just this, run-stuffing, two-gap defensive tackle. I mean, look at this burst right here. I hand up, and, I mean, he shoots out, and he's going.
I mean,
that's a lot of beef moving forward. And imagine that running after you as a quarterback. I think he was a mid to late first-round pick coming into this Combine. And I would not be surprised now if he moves into the top 10, top 15 conversation.
Wow.
I mean, look at some of the agility here. Just keep in mind, that's 341 pounds, being able to stop, change direction, right? And just some of those things that you need. I think he just proved at the Combine that he's more than a one-trick pony. He's more than a strength bull rush guy from the interior. I think you can put him out 3-tech, maybe even a touch wider. You can put him in the nose. You can do a lot of different things. And he talked about at the Combine, too, wanting to be down to 330s in the pros. So at 341, he even wants to maybe lose another 10 pounds.
Right.
What will that do to the agility, speed, strength? And he said, look, I think I can give teams something from a pass rush prowess. And I think what that Combine show with that little spin move there and everything else is that, maybe he can. I don't think he's just a two-gap run stuffer. I think he can give give you something from the interior. I think he's a well-rounded player. I just thought he killed the combine and made himself a little bit of dough.
He did. Davis set new records for that 40-yard dash, like we talked about, for the longest broad jump by a player 300-plus pounds and the highest vertical by a player 340-plus pounds. So going back to that national championship game, semifinal game, when you saw a large Georgia Bulldog that was just going across the internet like flames, that was Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
This huge man playing football.
Well, and then he had all that talent next to him, out wide, behind him at linebacker with no Kobe Dean and Lewis Seen and at safety. So, I mean, it's just that was such a talented group. And now you know why they won a national championship, because they had guys like that, and guys that are going to be, littered across the first round, defensive players. They were just really, really terrific.
Yeah, because they had some grown men. All right, let's get to that.
Some grown men.
We talk a lot about it already. The fastest 40-yard dashes, and entering this combine, no DB since 2003 ran a 40-yard dash in under 4.27 seconds. And look at that there.
Look at that.
Two do it in this combine, including Baylor's Kalon Barnes, 4.23, and then you have UTSA's Tariq Woolen, who comes in at 4.26. Tariq Woolen's fastest by a player at least 6 foot, and he comes in at 6'4", 205. That's a large man, too.
34-inch arms, right? So you've got a guy who's, 6'4", 205, 34-inch arms, is a converted receiver. So he hasn't even really been playing cornerback all that long.
Right.
But then, he also put the top vertical in the group, 42 inches, Danny. So, I mean, just from an athletic standpoint, I mean,
that's jumping off over a grown child.
It is. It's amazing to me. And you just look at it there. Look at how big he is. Imagine him as a corner, just trying to run downfield with somebody, no problem. And, I think from a technical standpoint, like I mentioned, he hasn't been doing it that long, but you get him into Aubrey President, Aaron Glenn. You don't think those guys are going to love
let him go.
A guy 6'4", 205 to work with a 42-inch vertical? Yeah, good luck high pointing those passes against him, and can run like that, show the long speed. And, look at that, not bad. Not really fluid in terms of a hip turn, but, the athletic traits just jump out.
Yep.
And I think with coaching and with a little bit more experience, he's going to be, I think, a really good player in this league for a long time. And I think with that size, too, you have some versatility with him, too. Like we saw with Fatu Melifonwu last year, he can play the dime, and you can be a matchup guy with a guy like that just because of his rare athletic traits. And so, he was another guy too. He was third on my list of the 10 guys that impressed me. I thought he had a great combine, and I think he's now, squarely in that day 2 conversation, right around round 2, round 3, because the team's going to look at him and be like, whoa, that ceiling is so high for a guy like that with those physical traits.
Yep.
We can work with that, and I think we can make him a little bit better.
I mean, one team that has already seen him up close and personal is the Detroit Lions. He was there at the Senior Bowl playing for the American team.
Yeah.
So Lions, they've got some capital there on day 2.
Yeah, they do have some capital there on day 2, and they're looking for defensive players. I mean, let's make no mistake about it. Obviously, the offensive side of the ball, they need a wide receiver, and they talked about that. We've talked about that.
We know, Tim, you want your wide receiver.
I want the wide receiver.
Come
but
on.
Look, they need to improve their linebacker depth. They need some help at safety. They need an edge rusher, maybe 2. And I think when cornerback, we talked about that when we talked about cornerback specifically at the combine. With Jeff Okuda's injury and Jerry Jacobs' ACL, you love the depth that they have there and the talent that they have there when they're healthy.
Yes.
And so, do you add another guy to that piece to not only raise the competition in that room, but also to help to just cover all your bases in case something happens with the rehab with Okuda and Jacobs, and maybe they're not back. You add some numbers to that room, maybe a veteran in free agency as well.
It'll be interesting to see. All right, let's move on to the longest broad jump, and the wide receiver who took home that medal showed size, speed, explosiveness, especially in the 40-yard dash as well. Who do you have taking home that medal for longest broad jump?
Yeah, Christian Watson. You see it right there on the top of the screen. 11.4. 11.4. I mean, that's an explosive jump, and that's what the broad jump really is measuring. Is just that explosiveness, that first step, that the high pointing, to be able to jump, and just the explosive athletic traits. And look, Calvin Austin's was pretty impressive too. But why I mentioned Christian Watson is because, along with that, 6'4", 208 pounds. 4.36 in the 40-yard dash too, which was 6th best among receivers. His 38.5-inch vertical, that was 6th best. And then we talk about the broad jump right here. That's he was tops among all receivers. In a wide receiver class that really jumped out at the combine, to lead in any category was really, really good. And then he was another guy, too, that I kind of liked at the Senior Bowl. I thought he made plays, was a smooth route runner. So you add all those physical traits to then what he did on the field at the Senior Bowl, and even, his season at North Dakota State was really good, too. I just think he's one of those guys, to me, that has worked his way into maybe that late first round, range. And that's saying something given how terrific of a wide receiver class this is. But look at that. That's 6'4". That's 6'4", 208, guys. And that was 11.4 broad jump to go with that for official, 4.36. And so just smooth, right? Big hands, big frame. When you talk about quarterbacks, too, and maybe the difference between a guy like Watson and some of the smaller guys is that catch radius, right? When you're a quarterback and you're throwing to a guy who's 6'4" and 208 pounds, he can go get it. He's got long arms. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I think sometimes when you're throwing, especially throwing deep to smaller guys, that room for error is so much smaller than, say, throwing it up to a guy who's 6'4", 208 with big arms. And look, Ben Johnson talked about the red zone, right there, being able to gain separation, make plays outside the numbers.
That's exactly what
that clip right there, showed, and that's what they're looking for. He made the point. We talked about this in Indianapolis as well. Is when you talk about the Lions and the red zone and throwing outside to the receivers, they were below average in terms of the targets to outside guys in the red zone. That last clip right there is exactly what a guy like Christian Watson can bring to your offense because of that size, speed, and physical skill set.
Right, Christian Watson, his career at North Dakota State averaged 20 yards a reception. So you're getting a big receiver in that.
What does Ben Johnson want again?
He wants a guy to catch the ball down the field.
Oh, and he averages what?
20 yards a reception.
That's a guy that gets down the field, right?
He's right now by PFF has him going number 30 overall to Kansas City.
Yeah, so right there, I was right there.
Lions might have a 32 overall pick. Just saying.
Yes. They got 32, 34, so I think a guy like that, if he's still on the board, if he makes it past Kansas City, I think he's very much in the conversation there, depending on who's still on the board, right there in that kind of 32 to 34 range. And again, the upside with him, right? You get him into an NFL system, you get him playing better competition too. He's just going to have to elevate his game. Antoine Randall L, can develop those guys. We saw it with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he'll help you do that. And so I think that'd be a terrific pick there.
All right, let's move on to the fastest 20-yard shuttle. And the shuttle is there for agility and quickness to see how quickly these guys can change directions. Taking away the cake for that.
What name stands out a little bit on that list right there? I'm just looking at, I see cornerback, safety, wide receiver, and then what?
A defensive end.
Defensive end?
That's a large, fast man that can change directions quickly.
270, yeah.
Yes, Aiden Hutchinson taking home the medal for the fastest defensive end, second all-time at the Combine as well.
Isn't that amazing? And that three-cone, too, like when you're talking about quickness and agility, change of direction, like that's the drill that teams really look at, is that three-cone, that short shuttle. And that three-cone measured amazingly. There were only 2 wide receivers that had a better three-cone than Aiden Hutchinson. Third best out of every player at the Combine. And so, look, you look at the 40-yard dash, right, and 4.74, I think it was. It doesn't jump out to you, but that split was elite. 161, I think it believes. You probably have it in your notes right there. That's what teams are really looking for. How can you get off the ball? How do you just, charge off out of that stance? And so, the vertical jump 36. The broad, you like to see it at 10, but it's right there. And then that 3-cone and that 20 shuttle are really, really super elite.
Elite, yes.
I mean, super elite. And so you're talking about a guy who's 6'7", 260 pounds, strong. People talked about the arm length. I'm not huge on that. I think it's something that you take a look at, you watch it on tape, maybe some of these, really good NFL tackles with really long arms, maybe he's got to, develop some counters and stuff like that. Look, that doesn't jump off, but that split was really, really good. That's what you have to look at with Aiden Hutchins, that first 10 yards of that 40-yard dash. That was really good, mixed with the cone, mixed with the 20, mixed with some of these drills where I thought he could show he could play in space. Stumbled a little bit there, but that's no big deal. I think just the quickness, change of direction, all that stuff that happens between where he lines up and the quarterback, which is less than 10 yards, that's where he measures in elite athletically, and that's what teams care about.
Aiden Hutchinson having, an elite combine. They will have Pro Day at Michigan coming up March 18th, so Hutchinson can probably take mostly just a seat back and just kind of watch.
I think the bench there will maybe be a little bit important.
Right, he did not do the bench.
Thibodeau did 27 at the bench at the combine. Teams will want to see that strength. But I think when you look at the film with him and his bull rush and his strength film-wise, it's kind of like what we talked about with Traylon Burks when we were down at the combine about tape speed versus track speed.
Right.
I think there's a little bit too about, being able to sit there and bench press and then being able to bench press on the left tackle into the quarterback, which we saw Aiden Hutchinson do time and time again. So, I really like this guy. I think maybe the concern if you're a Lions fan who really, really likes him is that he had such a good combine, and look at that motor, just never stops, right?
No.
Just getting him. And so you add all that short quickness stuff, the strength, to a guy who never ever quits, never stops, makes tons of plays, just, secondary, after cleaning stuff up. And so I guess the concern for Lions fans is, was that combine good enough that Jacksonville says, wow, I don't think we can pass on a guy like that. That's a guy that really, can help our defense, take the next step. And so I guess if you're a Lions fan and you really, really want Aiden Hutchinson, that's probably the only concern, is that Jacksonville was at that combine in Indianapolis too. They saw all this stuff, and they get whatever player they want at number one. And so I think Aiden Hutchinson had a good enough combine that I think he's squarely in the conversation at number one, and obviously at number two with Detroit as well.
I just can't see Jacksonville not taking an offensive lineman. But I don't know.
But
we don't know what they're thinking.
It's what we talk about all the time with the draft. Do you reach for a position, or do you take best player available? And when you look at teams who do well in the draft, and you look at teams that foundationally build their team well through the draft, it's by taking best players available. It's not always just taking, hey, we need this tackle to protect this, even though maybe he's not a better player. I just think you get in trouble as a team. Now, if it's even, if Evan Neal or the kid from
Ekwonu.
Ekwonu, if they're right there in that grade with Hutchinson, then I think that you can have that conversation.
Right.
But if it's Hutchinson and then those guys, I think you're reaching that. And at number one especially, you just really don't want to reach, Danny. You take the best player that's there, you build that defense, and you try to find another way to protect your quarterback. That's just me if I'm building.
I know. I talked with Orlando Pace at the Combine, former first-rounder, offensive line. He would like to see an offensive lineman go number one. So if anything, do it for Orlando.
There you go.
Just do it for
I
Orlando.
like it.
He's
Jacksonville,
great
anybody
team.
listening out there?
Do it for Orlando. All right, let's get to some more top performers.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to go back to Georgia. They had 14 players there at the Combine invited to it. 8 of them were on that championship defense.
Crazy.
Shocker, not really.
Not really.
So who
saw
from
what they did to Alabama. I mean, saw what they did to Michigan.
I know. I know. It was a lot. So who from that Georgia defense stuck out as other top performers from this Combine?
Well, it's funny. All season, I think the big story there along that defensive line has been, Jordan Davis. But to me, Devontae Wyatt was a guy who, maybe played second fiddle, but talent-wise, skill-wise, is definitely not second fiddle. And it goes to just what we talked about. And you look at him, running here, 4.77. That's another one we talk about. That's a big man running really, really fast. That 10-yard split, right? 1.66. Just, 0.5 of a second slower than Aiden Hutchinson. And look at the agility there, quick feet. I think he was already a first-round talent to me, but now I think he's maybe in that conversation right there. Who is it? Is it Devontae Wyatt who goes first, or is it Jordan Davis who goes first? I think some people maybe even see a higher ceiling, with Wyatt.
Yeah.
He was top 5 in the vertical, 29 inches, and he was top 3 in the broad jump too, 9.3. And we saw right there, he was smooth, fluid, running those drills. So, I think when you talk about the 2 best interior defensive linemen in this draft, I think it starts and stops with Georgia. And it'll be interesting. It's either Jordan or Wyatt, to me, who goes off the board first, but I think both guys are, probably top 20 picks. That's how good they were and how good of a combine they had.
I know you also want to talk about defensive back Lewis Cine, also from Georgia. Last name spelled a little differently, C-I-N-E. It is Cine for all of those, for your fanatics. So what are you seeing from Cine?
I'm seeing a good 40 right there. I'm seeing a guy that can fly. And look, 6'2", 199, right? And I think he put himself squarely in the conversation along with Kyle Hamilton and Dax Hill from Michigan to be in, those first three safeties off the board. I mean, he blazed that 40, 4.37. That was 5th best among safeties. But then he was also the top performer, Danny, in the broad, over 11 feet, 11.1, and he was tied for 5th in the vertical at 36.5. And so, it's not bad, little transition and hips there. And look, he was a single high safety there too. So not a lot of those, right? So I think he comes into the NFL a little bit unique in that he's got that single high safety skill set. Now they play split here in Detroit, but you can easily take a guy who knows single high and just now give him half the field. That's even easier.
It's way more difficult to do single high safety.
100%. And he did it at a high level for a really good defense. And so, I think he's just got a unique skill set. I think maybe some teams might see that and be, boy, is he better than Kyle Hamilton? I'm not quite there yet. You saw the drop there. That's why he's not playing receiver, by the way, all these defensive backs. Every time I see him drop one, I'm like, oh, that's why you're not a receiver.
The defensive backs did not have a good day catching
there you go. But hey, it's all right. Get the ones that are right to him, knock those balls away. That's all he needs to do.
Yes.
That's why he's not a receiver.
Nope.
A little bit cleaner here, but again, he's a safety. You need him to come down in the box, hit. You need him to knock those balls away. And at 4.37, he's a guy that can go sideline to sideline. And I just think he's really one of those talented safeties. And I think it's a really deep group of safeties. I think that's good if you're Detroit. We'll see what happens with Walker and signing, re-signing him. We'll see if that happens. But I think they need a guy or two alongside him, whether that's in free agency and whether that's one of these guys right here that's one of these young bucks that I think it's a very deep group. When Brad Holmes talked about positions that he loved, interior defensive lineman, we talked about it with Jordan and Wyatt, and it fits. Safeties, Cine, Hamilton, Dax Hill, cornerbacks, that's a really good group too. So, I think the positions of need kind of fit in this draft what the Lions are looking for, and I think that's terrific. Wide receiver as well.
Correct, yes. And then, so that was your top performers from the defense.
Yes.
Now top performers from the offense. I know you have running back Breece Hall of Iowa State up there. He only had 3 lost fumbles in his entire career. Really consistent guy.
Yeah, really, really consistent production. Almost 4,000 yards in 3 years. So you get production, but at 217 pounds. So remember, this is a 217-pound guy right here who shows terrific patience when you watch him on tape. And, that's, 4.39 right there. So he's a sub 4.4 guy, at 217 pounds. He also posted a 10.6 broad, which is really, really good. And he had a 40-inch vertical as well. So the explosive pounce. And did you see just that subtleness when he got the ball? He's not quick to do anything. I think he reminds me a lot of, Le'Veon Bell. That's kind of who he reminds me of a little bit, but obviously with more explosive athletic traits. Just his patience at the line of scrimmage. When you watch him, he sets stuff up. That was important for him too, to show that he could be a part of the passing game, and I thought he did pretty well in those drills. He catches the football pretty smooth, tucks it, turns, and then boom, you're into 4.39, which is a difference maker. So, those are option routes right there that we see right there. Those are huge too. And so I think he just kind of showed everything he needed to show. So you saw the production, right? You love that going in. And then he runs the way he does and all those physical traits. And then I thought he had, really a good on-field workout. And that being the biggest thing right there is just showing that he can be a huge part of the passing game, which is where the NFL is going right now. So, Breece Hall, I think, is going to be right there with Kenneth Walker III, who also had a terrific combine, almost made my list. But I just think he's going to be right there as who's the number one running back off the board. Is it Kenneth Walker or is it Breece Hall? And I think that'll be an interesting thing as the draft gets closer, see where those are graded on teams' boards and who the first running back off the board is.
Another top offensive performer in the pass game this time is wide receiver Calvin Austin III out of Memphis. All-American in track and field, so we know
guy
he's got
Lions
the wheels.
got to coach down at the Senior Bowl.
Correct.
Yeah.
Seen him up front.
And we talked to Antoine Randall Allen. Look, I think that the thing that you love about him is that he was an outside guy at Memphis. I mean, you look at him and he's 5'8", 170 pounds, right?
Yeah.
So you instantly think, oh, well, that's a slot guy.
Yeah.
He did not play the slot
Right.
at Memphis. He played out wide. Antoine Randall Allen at the combine, when we asked him about him, he said, well, he's actually got to kind of learn to play inside a little bit more. Which is unique for a guy that small. Usually you're like, you get pigeonholed in the NFL into being a slot guy, but look at that. Whoo! That can get you down the field.
easy.
It looked 4.32, really? So, you put him out wide in X, but again, it's the size that you worry about with him a little bit. Like I talked about before, in the difference between him and Christian Watson, that's 6 inches of difference if you're a quarterback throwing it downfield to either him or Christian Watson. So that's the big difference. But you love the athletic traits, right? 4.37 or 4.32, which you loved. 11.3 vertical. That was just behind Watson, 1 inch.
Yeah.
So just everything jumps off the board athletically with him. And then you watch the tape. It was always making plays downfield, and he plays out wide. I mean, if he's 6'2", you're talking about him maybe being a top 10 pick, top 5 pick. But the fact that he's 5'8", he's not. But I still don't think that should deter you from seriously considering this guy, because he just has explosive traits. You mentioned just how easy that looked running down the field. And look, he can take the top off the defense. And if you're looking for somebody like that, Calvin Austin III from Memphis was another guy to me that really showed he's an explosive player.
I love it. All right, we have some more top prospects that will potentially go in the first round, have a really good shot. And I love mentioning this first player because he's a Detroit kid.
Sauce.
Cornerback, Sauce Gardner out of
Yeah.
Cincinnati was the talk of the combine. He is all business. Every time he went to an interview with NFL teams, he wore a suit. Granted, he had a big ol' diamond sauce necklace across his chest, but he's all business, very professional, and just everyone there spoke so highly of him.
When you watch the tape of him, he is really an amazing prospect.
Yeah.
I mean, he went 33 games in his college career, did not allow a touchdown. I think teams had a 31.8 passer rating when throwing at
that's
him
awful.
throughout his entire career. Last year, Danny, and this was a team that was really good, right? Made it to the national semifinal. 18 receiving yards. That's the highest total against him in any game last year.
Oh, wow.
So you look at that and you see tape and you're like, wow, okay, that's production, right? That's a guy that can deliver the hit stick a little bit there too as well. But then you want to see the athletic traits, what goes with it. 6'3", 190 pounds. And some will question the 190 pounds. Okay, you can put 10 pounds of muscle on in the NFL. You can do that in an offseason. He will do that in an offseason. But look, 33-inch arms, which you loved, and then ran the 4.4 140. So the long speed, right? So not only is he 6'3", 190 with good length, but he's also got 4.4 speed with long arms. He is everything that you wanted. He completely validated the tape, and that's what you talk about with the combine sometimes, right? A guy runs slower than you thought or something. His tape looks so great, but the traits didn't really match. Now you've got to go back to the tape and watch why. I think with a guy like Sauce Gardner, that was smooth.
Yeah.
It just looks smooth. He does everything easy. That was one word that I think a lot of teams use and a lot of draft analysts have used to describe him is just, it looks easy.
Yeah.
It's easy. The game's easy for him.
Right.
And then he matches it with the athletic traits. Look at how fluid he is turning around and moving those hips. I just think he definitely solidified himself as the #1 cornerback in this draft, and I would be shocked if he gets out of the top 5. I think he's going to be that good of a player.
For the Detroit kid,
And
why
Detroit
not?
King High School, I think it was,
Yes,
right?
King High School,
Good
yes.
for him. Good for him.
That is
Where
awesome.
was Michigan on that? I was he in Cincinnati?
I'm not sure why he went
gotta
down
talk to your
south.
people down there.
Seriously,
Okay.
what are we doing?
They've got to dip into Detroit a little bit more. There's some
Gosh.
talent there, boy.
I know.
And he is definitely one of them. He had a terrific combine, 100%.
All right, someone who could also go in the first round probably will. If you see this man walking down the sidewalk, you're like, that's a football player. Jermaine Johnson III, the edge coming. coming out of Florida
State. He's my
State.
sneaky favorite guy.
Yeah, I mean,
I
ACC
really
Defensive
like
Player
him.
of the Year. There's a lot to like.
There's a lot to like. And you talk about, everybody talks, there's Aiden and Kayvon, and then there's the rest of them.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. That's how much
Put some
I
more
like.
respect on his
That's
name.
how much I like Jermaine Johnson.
Yes.
I don't think the gap is that big. I mean, look, he's 6'5", 254 pounds, and look, 4'5", in the 40. That's That's a big man.
That's
running
a large
too.
man.
That's sub 4'6" for a guy that's over 250 at 6'5". But then again, it was that a 1.55 10-yard split. Mm-hmm. That's really elite. That was better than. A Hutch. So,
right.
I mean, that's the number that we were talking about with Aiden Hutchinson. We can say the same thing about, Jermaine Johnson. And then you look at, you mentioned it, the Defensive Player of the Year, 11.5 sacks, 17.5 tackles for loss. So there's all that production, and then he matches it with the physical traits.
Yes.
I thought he was absolutely by far the best player at the Senior Bowl, and it wasn't even close. He's got one of the most ridiculous spin moves you will see. He pulled it out in one-on-ones at the Senior Bowl,
yeah.
and you see it on tape every now and again at Florida State, and he did it in the games at the Senior Bowl too. That's
soft
6'5".
Soft hands.
You're wanting him to get after the quarterback.
They all, honestly, they all did that.
He's not going to be in space all that often. You've got to be able to show that you can do it. Teams will drop a defensive end, obviously, in some of their blitz schemes and blitz packages, and so you just make sure you can get out there and do it. And
right.
at 6'5", 250 pounds, and a 4.58, he can do it.
Yeah.
So, but to me, I think he's a terrific player. I think he's a top 15 pick. I think he's right there, and I think he'll be just as productive as a rookie as Aiden Hutchinson and Kayvon Thibodeau. You heard it here from me first.
That says a lot.
I think he's that good.
Man, all right. I also would love to know, who is your sleeper pick? And you're going to the FCS for this one.
How much did you watch Montana State this year?
0.
What?
0.
You didn't catch all
Did
Montana
not,
State? No.
What is their mascot? They're not the Grizzlies.
No,
are
let me
they?
get into the analysis here real quick.
Okay.
No, I don't know. But here's a guy, right? He's a running back. He was a quarterback there.
Jeez.
And then he finally, he played some defense. And then, you move him to linebacker. And I think just the physical tools with him, right? 6'4", 243 pounds. And look at that guy.
Yeah, that's a linebacker.
That's 4'2". For a 6'4", 243-pound linebacker. That was tops among all linebackers.
Oh, they're the Bobcats, Tim.
There you go. Now we know. Montana State Bobcats. They have a 36-inch vertical, 10.8 broad, and 147 tackles, 83 solo, and 14 tackles for loss to go with that. And look at that.
That's
just
lot.
Fluid, right?
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that can play in space. I think he's a linebacker you can do a lot of different things with. And it goes to that point we talked about at the top. Look, if you can play ball, they'll find you. Montana State, Ferris State, Wayne State, it doesn't matter what state college you go to. The NFL will find you.
Yeah.
And that's a terrific example as a guy like that who just killed the combine. And I think now he moved himself into day 2 draft pick because people are going to see the production and the athletic traits and be like, whew, we can do some things with a guy like that.
Right.
At the very least, he comes in and he's a core special teams guy who's probably a stud because of his size and speed. So,
why not?
You need guys all across,
Yeah.
Your roster. And I think he's can be one of those guys that's just really, really good, has huge upside, and NFL will find you.
I know. I'm interested to see how high up the FCS Player of the Year will make
it
in this year's draft. Okay. Last but not least, before we wrap this show up, we just dove into so much, and we'll keep talking about this throughout leading up to the draft.
But first, before draft,
we've got a little free agency.
So
that's exciting. I have never been a part of NFL free agency. This is my first one, so it's like kind of taking in all of the new signings and
be ready to be overwhelmed.
You never really know what's going to happen.
Yes.
We did see some reports. Josh Reynolds' agent did tweet that the Lions have re-signed him, so we're waiting to confirm that with the Detroit Lions.
Once he puts pen to paper, that'll be official. The team will announce it. But look, terrific move, right?
Yes.
I think, and I don't think it changes anything that we're talking about in terms of wanting to get, a player in free agency, another player in free agency, maybe one of the top tier guys, and wanting to get a guy in the draft. I think the more competition you can add to that room, you've got St. Brown, Reynolds, and Quintez Cephas right now. You get, a top tier free agent maybe, and you get one of the top, wide receivers in the draft.
Yeah.
Now you're talking about, if Josh Reynolds is your fourth, fifth guy with how productive he was at the end of last year, with how much of a good relationship he's got with Jared Goff and was a playmaker. Just your depth at that wide receiver position is all of a sudden so much better.
After it was very depleted.
Yeah,
at
and I
points
think
this
to
season.
me, he's a number 2, number 3 type wide receiver.
I was going to say 4 or 5. Okay.
But I'm just saying,
Yeah.
if that's where it falls, to me, he's a number 2, number 3 type guy. But I'm just saying, just in terms of depth wise, if you've got 5 guys that are as good as him,
That
and
ain't
you're
bad.
talking about him, being 5 guys, I think that's a great spot to be in.
That's really impressive. So we will continue to update on the newest re-signings and signings here throughout free agency with the Detroit Lions. All right, thank you so much for sticking with us all throughout the Combine Week and here for our recap show. That's Tim Twentyman. I'm Dannie Rogers. Follow us on social media so you never miss any announcements, and we'll see you next time.